Coos Bay City Council meeting to order. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So just a couple items for everyone. Drew Farmer will not be attending this evening, and Carmen Matthews will be virtual. So the first item on the agenda this evening is public comments. So I see a couple here that are referencing an item that we have on the agenda. So Dick and Jeremy, it's your option. You can come up and make testimony now if you like, or you can wait until the agenda item comes up and make comments then. Totally up to you.
I prefer to wait for the agenda and always.
Both of you? Okay. So the next person that has signed up for public comments is Robert Cribbins. And I want to mention to everyone, you don't have to be on this list to make a public comment. So if you'd like to come up and make a public comment, if your name's on the list, you're more than welcome to. All right, Robert?
May I present the panel first with documents?
Sure. You can hand them to Nicole. So, Richard, if you just give your name and where you reside, please.
Robert Cribbins, 810 8th Terrace, Coos Bay. This is regarding busking. Does the panel understand busking? In downtown Coos Bay primarily, but not solely, during farmers market, busking is protected by the First and 14th Amendments. Market manager Melissa Haysart presented me with a packet, Exhibit A, of expectations regarding busking and vending. First, busking is not vending, and the documents I've handed to you demonstrate the correct and enforceable United States law court cases, both identifying and defending the application of this art form as a civil right of freedom of expression. Just because the farmers market wants to do as their packet states does not validate it. I cannot, for instance, run a stop sign on Elrod just because I say so. The argument that the market may give is that they negotiate the said area during the market and therefore, as temporary owner, may impose their own policy and procedures. Doesn't hold water. And here's why. A friend lives downtown. He comes out of his flat at will. He wears tan shoes with pink shoelaces, a Panama hat with a purple hat band. Man, oh man. My neighbor walks through the market, handing out little colored stones, flowers, expressing herself. Shop owner Susie comes out with her little dog, takes a break, visits, does a crossword puzzle, all during market times. None of these people are required to register, pay a fee, wear a badge, or even ask permission. The requirement of the market is invalid, according to the documents. They assume an authority that is not theirs. Please refer to Exhibit B, legally, fragment specific, Harvard Law School. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we have a question, I guess. This would be for Nate, our city attorney. You've heard the comments, and I think you've seen the documents, and you're aware of the situation.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention today, and I did some quick research on it. And the issue is, it's a First Amendment issue in terms of, but you know, the city has a right to place certain reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on First Amendment rights. And that's what the city has done in this particular case. The city has basically permitted the Downtown Association put on the market, and the market has its particular procedures on how you get a booth or how you enter, how you participate in the market. And those, based upon my understanding and looking at the law, are reasonable in the circumstances. The key here is one, we're not preventing him from his speech based upon the nature of his speech. In other words, while he says people are treated differently, as far as the city's concerned, the city is treating everyone the same in that regard. That the city has a legitimate governmental interest, which we do in terms of putting on or having the farmer's market put on, and that he has an opportunity, that it's the least restrictive. In other words, he has other options, and those options would be he can do his thing at some other time, some other location, or he could be actually just on the outskirts where the farmers market or the downtown association doesn't have any control, and do it there. But based upon my review of case law, both under the U.S. Constitution and under Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution, the city is within its realm to place reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions such as exist by and through the downtown market. It's my opinion. We could do more in-depth analysis, but I think the city is in good position in that regard.
So for a little background, so the Downtown Association has a farmer's market May through October. And they get a permit to operate that farmer's market during that period of time on Wednesdays and for a time specific during that. So, and I've seen Richard down there, and what he's referencing, I believe, is he plays music and wants to be able to play it in the farmer's market without signing up for the market as others have done to participate in the market. But he's also has done it on the fringes, just around there, and done that. So he's more than able to do that. But this would also pertain to if we have the Blackberries Art Festival, like they take a permit out, or the Fun Festival, or any other festival in the same instance, they have the right to take a permit out for that specific.
Same principle.
period.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, counselors, questions on this? No? I hope that we were able to clear that up for you, Dick. If you want to come back another time and make another comment, we can look into it further, but I think our city attorney's covered it. I understand your position, and I feel for you, but I will look forward to seeing you on the fringe like I have in the past. So thank you for your time, and thank you for these exhibits. Would you like them back?
No, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have one more public comment, which is going to be, Susan's here, so let's see. Susan Anderson, and no, I'm thinking, never mind.
Hello again.
Hello, Susan.
I've been in front of this group more in the last year and a half than the entire 24 years I've lived here. I want to let you know we are moving forward with the bond. I know there was some concern today, so I'm open to questions. I have to point this out, though. I'm a little concerned about Joe's driving. He lives up the street from me. He can't get to his house without passing by my yard. I've had a yard sign there since Saturday.
Yeah, you have, but you didn't have it on the corner until just recently. You had it further up the street. I'm glad you moved it.
Okay. No, I have two now, and when I
Okay.
get my grass cut, there'll be another one up closer to your yard.
Or you can put it in my yard anytime you like, or I can stop and take yours.
So and that's happened to me too. So we do have plenty of yard signs for anyone who would like one. My car's full of them after the meeting, feel free. We did do phone banking this weekend, and I had actually removed Joe from the call list, assuming he would be voting yes, and maybe I should have left him on, so he would have known we were actually working. This weekend and every weekend except Easter weekend in April, we will be going door to door. We are looking for volunteers. All of you are allowed to do it, just not as a city council person. You have to do it with your citizen hat on, and if somebody recognizes you, you have to let them know you're not there as a city council person. You're there as a citizen of Coos Bay. Anyone in the audience can help us. We will be starting from the Grant Wagner parking lot at 10:30 on Saturday. The first shift will be 10:30 to 1:30. There'll be a second shift. You don't have to do both shifts. We will be, but you don't have to. From 1:30 to 4:30, and then again on Sunday from 1:30 to 4:30.
Where's the
Hunt
meeting?
Wagner, it's a city parking lot, but it sits between Hunt Wagner CPA and the old Michael Gordon, now Watson Phelps. I like that we have a stretch of city parking between two CPAs. We have been unable to get donated or cheap rent for an office space, so we are operating anywhere we can. I would invite you to see the website, which went live, www.buildcblibrary.com. There is all kinds of information there. By tomorrow, there will be an update on our door-to-door campaign. You are going to start seeing yard signs out. We have over 70 out we just got them on Friday evening. So in the last 3 days, we've put that many out, and we'll continue to do so. Those people who have yard signs in their yard will not be interrupted over the weekends by door-to-door people, because we already know you're voting yes. So there's an incentive to get some of them out. Are there other questions? Oh, I do want to address one other thing. I know there was concerns about, you are seeing some negative letters to the editor. They're typically the same people. Most of them do not live in the taxing district, because one of the things I always do is check I have all the voting records, so I check all the registration, and I always look. And so we note who the names are. But the worst thing you can do in a campaign is play in their sandbox. And so we are addressing the information another way, but we're not giving them credence by addressing their complaints directly. That's deadly for a campaign. So we are addressing them in our own way, and we do have folks doing letters to the editor. So questions specifically that the city council might have?
Any questions?
Still
Anyone?
looking for donations. I have the forms with me. You can't do it during a meeting, but afterwards, see me, yard signs, anything else.
Susan, is there like a digital media campaign to get this out through Facebook or other channels?
I'm looking at Stephanie because we're working with KDOC. Yes, our website is up, and the Facebook should be live. I'm not sure it is, but it should be live now. That is not my purview. Somebody else is in charge of the Facebook. You would not want me on there.
Okay. So from this moment forward, we're going to see a real push for the campaign.
Yeah, there has been already. You just haven't, our yard signs were laid, our door hangers were laid. Everything is being held up by other folks, so.
Okay,
But
thank
yeah.
you.
It's ready to go, and we are working, so all we need are volunteers.
Carmen, do you have your hand up? Was it for this? Make a comment at this time, or? Maybe not. Thank you, Nicole. All right, so we'll move. Anyone else questions for Susan?
I just have a comment, and everyone involved, for all the work you put into this. I serve on the library board and the library steering committee, so I've seen all the work that you guys are doing, and I appreciate it.
Well, we're being meeting to death, but we're getting there. And, we've got to have a library. It's a beautiful site for a library. It's going to be a great asset to this community, and that makes the work doable, so.
And I just want to reiterate what Rob said. Absolutely. We thank you so much, and everyone that's involved. So
Thanks.
we look forward to the vote and being over with and passing.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank you so much. Okay, any other public comments at this time? All right, we'll move on. First item on the agenda is, like to proceed?
I'll move to approve the calendar as presented.
Second.
To approve the consent calendar as submitted. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is presentation from Charleston Merchants Association. So we have Rick and Tim.
Yes,
Yeah, how you doing, Tim?
doing good. Yes, so I'm Tim Hyatt with the Charleston Merchants Association.
Just speak to the mic.
Okay,
Yeah, thank
Sure,
you.
I'm Tim Hyatt with the Charleston Merchants Association.
Okay,
Rick Osborne, Blue Ridge Strategies.
all right. And we have a PowerPoint, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and we're wanting to talk about the ballot measure coming up here. Many of you are familiar with this already. And so, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so essentially, the overall thumbnail sketch on this is it essentially mimics what's already in place for Coos Bay and North Bend, and that's with a 9.5% lodging tax that goes for tourism promotion and public safety. And so essentially what we're doing is just mimicking that same program that's been very, very successful in promoting our community and bringing that out toward the Charleston area. And that area essentially would consist of right about where Bay Point Landing starts, and then out past Charleston, about halfway up Seven Devils Road is where that would go. And it would only affect short-term lodging that's less than 30 days. And so anybody staying obviously beyond that, somebody who's, say, a traveling nurse in here for 2 months or something like that, it would not affect them. And so it's very narrow. And also it affects campgrounds and vacation rentals and really the whole gamut. So there's not any one group that is being picked on or that is paying more than another group is. And essentially the numbers are that it goes 70% toward tourism promotion and 30% toward public safety, and that would basically consist of the county being committed to spending that to making the Charleston area safer. And that would be through increased patrols and also beautification in the sense of trying to take care of derelict motorhomes that are left on the side of the road and things like that. And I'm trying to follow my presentation here. Yes. Yep. And so that's essentially the overall thumbnail sketch on it. Go ahead. And also for the visitor center as well. The Charleston Merchants Association currently operates the visitor center there in Charleston. Are you familiar with that? How many of you have you seen the visitor center there? It's not really the greatest piece of work. And being a part of the Charleston community and representing the businesses in Charleston, I take a real personal approach to this. And I really want the area to be something that I'm proud of, that the businesses are proud of, that my kids are proud of. And we're really trying to make the area shine as somebody comes over the bridge and sees a nice visitor center that's open, that's also going to be a community welcoming area as well. We're looking for a meeting room for local meetings, events, things like that. And so it's going to be more than just a visitor center, specifically. And yeah, go ahead. The next one, please. $277 million. That's how much was spent in the Coos County area in the 2019 dollars by visitors. And it's no small number. That's what goes for keeping, the businesses open that many of us frequent. That's what keeps the tackle shop open, the gas station open, the grocery stores open. And so even if somebody, maybe isn't necessarily in favor of a whole lot of tourism, they need to understand, of course, that that's what goes for keeping the community going. That's what keeps our businesses thriving. And that really is what makes a difference between businesses being here and not, So that makes a big difference. And through Oregon's Adventure Coast, they currently spend around $800,000 per year promoting the area. And this essentially should bump it up toward around $1 million or so. And so it's no, small, drop in the bucket. It really is quite a bit. And that would also give Charleston a seat with the Visitor and Convention Bureau. And so then, Charleston, of course, being the area with the beautiful beaches and where a lot of the tourists go, that's why they come to the county in many cases, just to spend some time out there in Charleston. Excuse me. So then that would give them an opportunity, give us an opportunity as the Merchants Association, as Charleston, to go ahead and represent the interests of Charleston, going forward as well. And so it's great for the community, and it's only affecting, overnight stays. I'd like to really emphasize that. It has absolutely nothing to do with any of the county parks, state parks, day use whatsoever. So none of them are going to see that. So absolutely no changes whatsoever to anybody visiting any of the parks for the day. And it's 9.5%, like you mentioned, on, say, a $40 tent site. So you're asking visitors to kick in less than $4 to make the area nicer next time they're there, make it safer. And that's essentially what we're doing. Rick, do you have anything else?
Well, we got one more.
Oh, sure. One more slide, yes. Yeah, and so essentially we have a PAC going, and Political Action Committee, and so, if anybody feels like they would like to donate to that, obviously, we would certainly welcome that. And, we're getting the word out there, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight talking about this. I want to keep this conversational. If anybody has any questions at all, any comments, please.
So I just want to clear up a few items. Number one, this
Sure.
is for May ballot, correct?
Yes,
This
it is.
coming up.
Mhm.
And even though this is just going to affect the businesses, short-term rentals facilities or lodging, in Charleston, the whole county has to vote on it because of the legalities that face us, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a key point because, this is something that the county commissioners didn't ask for it. They did put it on the ballot at the request of the Charleston Merchants Association, which in many ways kind of acts as a de facto sort of community organization there because it's an unincorporated city. So from my perspective, they're asking for something for their community, but the whole county gets to vote on it. So that's kind of a factor, but at the same time, I think that, if the community's asking for something and I don't live there and it doesn't affect me, I'm inclined to give them what they want.
So in Coos Bay, there's a Visitor Convention Bureau that Coos Bay, North Bend, the Coquille tribe participate in. And in that group, they promote Charleston because, as Tim reiterated or mentioned, it's a popular place. And we know that's where a lot of tourists want to come. But we also realize that majority of the motels are in this Bay Area and they stay here. So it's advantageous to us. But this would also help us bring more dollars to the VCB, which would give us more dollars to promote the whole area, which would be a benefit to everyone. So it's not just a benefit to Charleston, it's a benefit to the whole county and everyone in it. And Charleston, unfortunately, is under a situation, they need a new visitors convention facility or a tourist place, and also it's all volunteerism right now. And you would also pay for someone to be there, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great points, and yes, that is correct. It would create a paid position or multiple paid positions that would be staffing the visitor center.
Right. And our information center here is the same thing. We have volunteers, which they will also, but we also have paid staff. And that keeps it operating and going. And without paid staff, it's very difficult to operate an information center. So this would also help. And I'm going to reiterate, these type of funds, and they call it a tax, but it's a tax for just the visitors, is done everywhere. And by not doing this, we are handicapping ourselves because we have to participate against those that do. And it's hard enough with the budget we have. The budgets up the coast, Lucinda can state to that, are bigger than ours. And so just recently, we've been able to, in the last 6 years, increase it from $350,000 now to $800,000. So that's by increasing our taxes, but by doing that, by promoting it, we've also increased the amount of people that stay in the area. So.
Well, I don't really have much more to say, Joe. I think you said it all, but to your point about, as the chair of the VCB, one of the things that we're most challenged with is that the North Coast and the Central Coast have much larger budgets, and so increasing this to close to $1 million would allow us to be more competitive. And quite honestly, I think we have the most beautiful coastline ever here on the South Coast. So, and Joe did a great job of reiterating this is just for the visitor. So super excited that you have this on the ballot, and I commend you for all the work that you're doing.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I have a
Yes.
question. I mean, first, I agree. I get the opportunity to travel, and I always pay a lodging tax everywhere I go. So I am in support of the lodging tax. The thing I'm curious about is the breakdown of the funds. Visiting Charleston, there's infrastructure lacking, such as trash cans, public safety, sidewalks, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the breakdown? I mean, I hear that you're talking about funds going to the VCB, but how are we going to build the infrastructure for Charleston to be able to accept those guests and make sure that they have, safety and places to throw their trash?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's a good question. And so the breakdown is that 70% goes to promoting tourism. And so that's the breakdown essentially would go partly toward the Charleston Merchants Association. And that's, again, for building a new visitor center and also, and a community center as well. And that would help to make the area, a more welcoming place. And as far as the other 30%, that goes toward the county, and the county has committed toward spending that for public safety for the Charleston area. And so that's essentially, in answering your question, how that would work. So when somebody comes into the area, they can feel safer and rest assured that their fishing poles aren't going to get stolen the night before they go fishing, which is obviously very bad for business. And so that's what we're looking at, on the overall picture. As far as some of the nitty-gritty details, as far as infrastructure in Charleston and things like that, this addresses the visitor center specifically, and through the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, we can't just take these funds and start building a new playground and a new park and so forth. So it's somewhat limited, but it is a whole lot better than what's out there now, and it's a great start to keep things going. And so this is a good start.
And Tim, that 70-30 split is by state statute, correct?
Correct. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And Sarah, so the counties stated that the 30% they will be receiving, they are going to utilize for patrols out there and helping that type of situation. I think public safety is what they've agreed to. And the other 70%, if I understand correctly, will be split between the VCB and the Charleston Merchants Association. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
And
Yes.
so that part that they receive 50%, they'll be able to build a new information center, and they'll be able to pay for staff. And there's some other tourist-related things they can do with those funds that are, specific in the state statute. So, and they can do garbage cans and things like that. I think they're limited what they can and can't do. So.
Yeah, and actually, as for some clarity, I believe the state statute limits that 70% to be used either for promotions or tourism facilities. It's very tight. And I know there's been a lot of angst from some cities to try and change that, but that's remained steady for a number of years. Credit to the Charleston Merchants Association. They've been negotiating with commissioners about what could be done with that other 30%. Instead of just going into the general fund of the county, they've negotiated that those funds would be spent to help better Charleston through public safety and through code enforcement of derelict structures.
And I don't think that, this is not a small amount. I don't know. I mean, I've been, way back when I was on the Information Visitors Convention Bureau, I wanted this to happen because the Shore Acres Park out there, RV park, and they won't charge a fee unless there's an initiative like this in place. Now, think about that. All the other state parks throughout the state that has a room tax, they're able to collect and give to whoever the entity is. Here, they're not charging anything because there's nothing in place. So, and that'd be a big revenue drawer. So I think it's going to be, we're figuring at least 300,000, probably 500,000 that this will draw. And so when you take those funds and put it into place, it's going to make a big difference, what they can do and what we can do and utilize those things to promote. So,
Mr. Mayor, that's 500,000 in total, 200,000 still going to the VCB, correct?
right, I mean, in total, right.
Yep.
Right.
And that's estimate, it might be more, it might be less. I think it might be more, but we don't know until the actual figures come in and this is in place.
Right.
But it's something that needs to be done just to be able to, compete with others in this kind of arena. So, and it's the visitors coming, they expect to pay it as you stated. We all do, so there's no reason they shouldn't be doing it there.
Right. Yeah, one of the numbers that I saw, from Janice through the VCB, that she mentioned that for every dollar that they spent in advertising, brought back something around $20 to the local community. And so, on from the whole standpoint of the rising tide lifts all boats, the better the community does, then the better the businesses do, and then ultimately, the more taxes that they would pay on other things because they're making more and so forth. And so it really is the kind of thing that we see as improving the prosperity of the area. And as that progresses and gets better, then of course, people tend to see the whole overall area get nicer as things get better.
So just to clarify, the 9.5% tax you're proposing is the exact same that Coos Bay, North Bend, and the tribe is charging, correct?
Yes, it is, correct.
Any other questions, Stephanie?
I didn't really have
or
A
comment?
question, mostly comments. I've had a special interest in Charleston, put myself through college working out there, met my husband, who was a park ranger at Sunset Bay, but also have worked with the Merchants Association through my place of business, and I think it's important to note that this is a passionate group that really has an interest in making Charleston better. We talked about infrastructure. They've been behind a lot of the things that I've seen positive. I don't want to say how long ago it was I was working out there, but it has definitely changed. Even producing a better visitor center, making that park, changing it to something positive, so when people came off of that bridge, they didn't have an eyesore. They had a positive thing. They basically shined something that was very derelict at a point, and made it better. This is the next step I see in really making Charleston bigger and better. It is the destination. I worked summers there, so I was there tourist season, and just really, I think the point is, like you said, the whole county gets to vote on this, but this group, the people of Charleston, even the lodging locations are behind this, and it would be a shame for somebody that lives in another area to say no to something like this when the community is asking for it. And obviously it's necessary to elevate that. So I just really wanted to make that comment. I appreciate that you've come to share this with us. You know, I look forward to seeing this passing.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Great, thank
You
you.
bet. Thanks for doing this. Susan, I just want to let you know, Carmen Matthews, he was able to speak, his computer problems at that time. He just basically said, if you could stop by his office, he'd love to talk to you about this, and I'm sure in support in some fashion. Okay? All right. Next item on the agenda, I don't see anyone here from the Oregon Port of Coos Bay. Okay. We'll come back if we see someone show up. Consideration
Mr.
to...
Mayor, if they do not come this evening, can we make sure to reschedule that presentation
Sure.
about Terminal 1?
There must have been a misunderstanding of some sort or whatever, but we'll reach out.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so the next item would be consideration to approve an agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management. I understand someone's here from Enterprise. All right. If you'd please come up and give us your comments.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So just give us your name.
Yep, Mike Breidenbeck with Enterprise Fleet Management.
Okay.
So I have had several discussions with Roger and Nicole regarding the overall fleet plan of the city, looking at specifically light-duty vehicles and non-pursuit. And we put this plan in place with quite a few other cities and counties across the state. So what we did was gather some data on what the city is spending today. There's three major buckets of what they're spending on the vehicles. And so we're looking at acquisition, maintenance expenses, and fuel expenses overall. And we get an idea of what the current budget looks like and put together what a plan's gonna look like moving forward. So I don't know how much you all know about Enterprise, or maybe you rented a car from us, maybe a location here in town, but we work with, the division that we're in is Enterprise Fleet Management. We work with small to mid-sized fleets. I have a local team of about 15 folks that only works with organizations that are here in Oregon. So that's the folks we're working with to be, managing this process eyeball to eyeball, making sure that it is a good fit on both sides. So I guess what we've done is I put together a synopsis, Nicole's got it here, and just want to kind of go over the highlights of what we found in looking at the fleet and what we found here. I'm gonna, let's see, I can kind of read that, but if I put it on my computer, then I can read it really good. Okay, so if we look at the current summary of the fleet And what we found, 72% of the light-duty fleet is 10 years old or older, 25% of the light medium-duty fleet is 15 years old or older. 13 years is basically kind of the average age of these light-duty vehicles. So when we look at what the current cycle time is from when you're buying them to when you're holding them to when you're getting rid of them, it'd take you 30 years to cycle through all of the vehicles that you have in your fleet based on how long you're holding on to them and how you're running them today. So when we look at this, part of the analysis we do is we look at what's the right tool for the job. Should you be driving pickup? Should you be driving a sedan? What does that department want to have? What do they need? And if they're holding onto a vehicle for that long, maybe they've got the vehicle, maybe they're not using the right tool for the job, right? We also consider as vehicles get older, they are going to cost more to keep on the road, and there's some safety considerations to go along with it. So our objectives of what we found was we looked at a plan to, we looked at a plan to shorten the life cycle considerably on these vehicles. And what we're doing is we're piggybacking off of just a lot of the philosophy that we put in place with our rental fleet. So Enterprise has a plan for how often we're buying vehicles, how long we're gonna hold on to them, and when the right time to sell these is gonna be. And so what we do is we take that philosophy and put it in place with your vehicles. So we would be shortening the current life cycle from 20 years to an average of 2.5 years. And here's what it does. So it would reduce maintenance costs by basically what we would do is we reduce maintenance costs with newer vehicles, right? Outsource that to the local tax base, a rate of $33.38 versus an average of $134 monthly per vehicle. Would save the city $30,000 in annual savings in just maintenance alone. It's going to reduce your fuel expense and your downtime expense and update your safety across the fleet. So when I look at just kind of big dollar numbers, this is the next piece here, Nicole. So when we look at big dollar expenses as a whole, the current budget on the fleet today, you've got an acquisition budget of $31,740. Maintenance budget of $34,500 and fuel budget of $38,104 for a total fleet budget currently of $104,344, and that's holding these vehicles for basically 20 years. What we're doing is capitalizing on newer vehicles, leveraging resale values on these vehicles, and reduced maintenance and reduced fuel expenses for a total fleet budget of $78,465, which would save $25,879. And that is the high level gist of kind of what we're looking to do. We've put this in place with, like I said, quite a few other cities and counties, and we would love to partner with you.
Questions?
So we have 25 cars currently in the fleet, is that correct, Roger?
We actually have 122 vehicles in our fleet.
Yikes, okay.
Some of our vehicles are very large vehicles, and
Okay.
those are not covered. Of course, we have a few fire trucks that would not be covered, and some large public works equipment. But our day-to-day drivers are, excluding our police cars, public works, parks, streets, wastewater, building codes, engineering. We have quite a few vehicles.
Okay. I was just looking at this fleet profile. Can you go through that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did was, when you notice here, there's 25 vehicles, and we've got maybe a dozen different vehicle classes. So this is something that we look at, right? So when we take the fleet list, and from what you've provided, I get a VIN number of every vehicle, and when I throw a VIN number in my system, it breaks out what the vehicle is. So it tells me if it's a 3/4-ton cargo van, a compact SUV, et cetera, et cetera. So there's quite a few different vehicle classes. What we would be doing is really narrowing this down to what's the right tool for the job from a usage standpoint, and then a total holding cost. And we look very closely at how much is this going to cost you to buy, how much is it going to be worth, because we're leveraging some resale, and you're leveraging Enterprise to resell those vehicles for you, and then maintenance and fuel costs long term. So what we did was we figured out, based on the age and the mileage that you're using these vehicles, how we would implement this plan over time. So we put a replacement for 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26, and then underutilized. We didn't determine any vehicles are being underutilized. We could dig in. Maybe there are, but from what we can tell right now, there's nothing. and then just what my criteria for replacements was gonna be. So in the first year, it'd be anything 12 years old or older, or an odometer over 120,000 miles. And then so on and so forth. So next we would go to 8 years, over 80,000 miles, then 6 years and 60,000 miles, 4 years and 40,000 miles. And then the last year, we would just replace all of the remaining vehicles.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? So my understanding is we estimate this to be a $25,000 minimum annual savings. There's probably some other benefits that we're not aware of, but we didn't want to put that in. Am I correct, Nicole?
Yes, short cord. That's correct. I think he's kind of alluded to a couple of those things. One thing, obviously, when you look at aged vehicles, we're looking at potentially some safety benefits of a newer vehicle. That's going to be backup cameras, that's going to be warning systems and things like that. Some of our older vehicles don't have those. To retrofit those, it's pretty spendy. Then we look at the fuel savings, we look at the cost of maintenance. We all experience the longer we keep those vehicles, just even in our own lives, they do tend to cost us a little bit more money. And right now with fuel costs, obviously that's on a hopefully long-term situation, but that's a significant cost to us right now, having vehicles on the road that are not the most fuel efficient options.
And then, so currently, we need a new vehicle. Who goes out and makes the inquiries and goes through that process?
So that happens generally at mostly the department level. Our operations administrator handles a great portion of that across the city. The police department handles kind of their own, but they kind of do a lot of legwork to come up with the best vehicles that we can get. And so we're going to have some staff savings just in this with those efforts there. They will be leveraging government buy options. We're still going to have that same opportunity with enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll save some staff time in doing this, is what I guess my point being at this time. And I understand also right now, some of our employees are using police vehicles that have had some usage, and because this is the way it is at this point in time. And if we implement this, that would probably go away.
Yes, so currently our library is the owner of a police vehicle that was no longer going to be put in use. And we do typically go through an auction process to resell our used vehicles once we've determined their replacement and not necessarily to keep in the fleet. Again, that's a process that staff members are doing and tracking and watching all of that. That's another great benefit we're going to get here, in that enterprise will manage that portion for us. They've already got those lines open and access to those resale markets. So.
That's a good point. So when we look at the vehicles that are going to be replaced, we're looking at, so we're going to be taking all of the existing fleet, and Enterprise comes and picks those up and sells them. So the whole agreement and the whole operation is all what we're doing is piggybacking off of an agreement through Sourcewell. So the city is a member of Sourcewell. They've already pre-negotiated essentially everything. They went out to bid. Enterprise unanimously won. It was probably about 3 years ago, and since then, that's the biggest part of our business has been local government, so counties and cities. So that handles all the acquisition. So when a vehicle arrives, ideally, we're going to be working with the departments to determine the right vehicle, but also logos will be on the side. If it needs a truck box is going to be in there. It's going to show up work ready. No one from the city is going to have to get that all upfitted onto the vehicle, and then to resale the vehicle when it's time to get rid of it. We come, we pick it up, we take it, we sell it. You receive all the benefits of the resale.
And so I see that in our packet, there's quite a few cities and counties in Oregon that you do. Mm-hmm. And so Nicole, did you do some reaching out to some of these?
We did. The first thing that we did was reach out listserv, because it's kind of a fast way to put some feelers out there. And then beyond that, we had awareness. The county had worked with them. Coos Health and Wellness, I believe, worked with Enterprise. They're not on this list because Michael didn't work with that group directly. So because we have a relationship with the county, we did contact them. Some of that conversation led us to pushing out a little bit further to some people not so close to us that Roger had direct connection to. And they kind of helped us get past some of those concerns the county had, which personally I wasn't worried about them. It was more about billing monthly versus quarterly, annually kind of thing, and I think we can manage whatever that billing period is, not necessarily a concern.
Okay, Roger?
Yes, I spoke with the city manager of St. Helens, very familiar one. He actually was the city manager of Myrtle Point for a number of years, so I had a good relationship with him. In addition, we also spoke with the finance director and the community development director of Sweet Home, who have been using this service, and they believe it's the best decision they made.
Comments, questions?
So this is a lease as opposed to owning outright, and right now we own outright.
We do. Now, we have looked at this in the past, and we chose not to go for it at that time, but the realization is that we struggle every year just to fund replacements of our police vehicles. And then on occasion, we're able to fund replacements of wastewater vehicles. The hard part is we don't have a funding source to generally replace fire vehicles, nor our other public works vehicles, and that generally then that causes us to hold on to those vehicles until more often than not they can't run anymore. And that's why I think we have some vehicles that were built in the 80s still in the fleet down there. This won't take care of all of our fleet, but it frees up our finances so that we can, one, have vehicles that are safe to operate more, and they can be more efficient for us. But secondly, then we'll have funding source where we can still take care of our police vehicles because they're not covered under this. But there are other vehicles, large purchases that we'll have in the future, such as we'll need another a fire engine. And as I understand it right now, the one that we purchased for just a little over $500,000 a few years ago is now costing up past $600,000. And we project in 2024 could be up to as high as $800,000.
So this is more of a mixture of, like, we're only talking about a portion of our fleet. Do you see any impact where we would normally reuse a vehicle? Like you said, for the library is using an old police vehicle. That's not gonna impact that, whereas if we find we have a future need in maybe one of those departments because there's more staff or whatever, it wouldn't be a negative impact to that at all, because it's just a portion of that fleet, our entire fleet.
No, that's a great question, and I don't foresee that as being a negative at this point in time. The reality is, we only used the used police vehicle because we didn't have another option.
Anyone else? So, I don't guess
Does
we're on any
Carmen have a
questions for you.
question?
Go ahead. Carmen? Yes.
Yeah, hey there. Yeah, so we're leasing in this scenario. How does that affect our tax liability in terms of property tax? Since we don't own the vehicle, does that lower our tax liability?
No, we don't have one.
I guess I would need a little bit more information, because we don't currently have a property tax payment on our vehicles.
Oh, okay. I had one more question, but it just escaped me. Never mind.
Think about this, let us know, Carmen. You can just speak up. Sometimes I'm not always paying attention. I'm glad there's others that do, with your hand being up. So Nate, there's an agreement here. Have you had a chance to look it over?
Yes, I did, and it looked appropriate.
And if
Nice job.
I looked at the agreement, if I understand it correctly, there's a clause that says that we can terminate this in 30 days, either party, am I correct?
I believe so.
All right. Anyone else?
I'll move to approve the city manager to enter into an agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management for an amount not to exceed $200,000 annually.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to enter into an agreement with the Enterprise Fleet Management. Any other comments? Anyone? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public hearing to consider enactment of a proposed ordinance amending the Coos Bay Municipal Code related to vehicle for hire business. So I'm going to get staff to interject where we're at on this. Who's going to handle this?
I believe Carolyn's online.
Carolyn?
I'm online to talk about marijuana.
Pardon?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to talk about marijuana, is what she said.
Isn't that?
Oh, I apologize. I skipped. Thank you, Carolyn, for being
Sure,
nice
no
about
problem.
that.
You can go ahead with your report, Carolyn.
Thank you. Good evening. Over the last few years, the council has worked on municipal code sections regarding marijuana land uses, their locations, what's allowed in marijuana-related businesses. And we're at a place where we need to tidy up some pieces of the code that didn't get caught in some of that review. And I believe this will be pretty much the last of it. A key piece of that is the fact that we don't have a definition for wholesale operations for marijuana in our code today, but in order to secure the maximum amount of OLCC revenue from the state tax on marijuana, we need to have that definition and identify a location in the city where wholesale operations for marijuana can operate. So one of the things in the ordinance that's attached is the inclusion of a definition of wholesale marijuana businesses. The other piece of the ordinance is related to the land use tables throughout the code that identify what uses are allowed in each area. Right now, the code does not allow marijuana, any kind of marijuana use in the waterfront heritage area, the urban public area, and the medical park area, but it's not specifically laid out that way in the code, and this would correct that. The ordinance would also be very specific that only retail would be permitted in the commercial district, and the commercial industrial district land use table would basically say that all the uses related to marijuana that we've identified in our code are permitted in that area. The section of our code that talks about how the marijuana businesses would operate, like their locations, how they dispose of waste, that kind of thing, are found in an entirely different section of the code that you've already worked on over the last couple of years. So we're recommending tonight that after you hold the public hearing, that you move to continue this to your next meeting, and that way we can move forward without having to read the ordinance in its entirety. It'll also give the public a second opportunity to speak to the ordinance if you go that route.
Okay, any questions, councilors, before I open the public hearing? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing at this time I'll make sure, to consider an enactment of proposed ordinance amending the Coos Bay Municipal Code regarding marijuana-related businesses. And I hope everyone heard Carolyn, the items. It's mostly housekeeping items that need to be addressed on this, if I understand correctly. And so that's what we're doing. Any comments? Come forth and give us your name. No comments on this item? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. We won't be taking action this evening. We'll be continuing the public hearing to our next meeting, and then at that time, we'll go ahead and take action after we have a public hearing. Okay? Thank you. Get back to next item that I jumped to. So now will be a consideration, our public hearing to consider enactment of a proposed ordinance amending Coos Bay Municipal Code related to vehicle for hire businesses. And who is handling this?
I'll take that.
I'll take it. Oh, can't see you down there, Chief. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm hiding.
Mark's blocking you, I guess.
Good evening, everyone. At the March 22nd work session, I brought to you a draft ordinance that would still provide a taxi cab regulations, but would also regulate additional vehicles for hire business operating within the city of Coos Bay. As requested by council during the March 22nd, 2022 work session, staff has reached out to the area company taxi cab owners to update them on the proposed revision to the Coos Bay Municipal Code and invite them to give testimony to the public hearing tonight. And you can see, I think there's several that would probably like to do that. Those that I did speak with during my conversation, they did express support of the revision to the municipal code and express that they'd like to all the companies to be treated the same. And we did only receive one written response, which is included in your packet. But I'll give a little background. The city of Coos Bay currently has a taxi cab ordinance that regulates how taxi cab companies and drivers of taxi cabs operate within the city of Coos Bay. This is in an effort to keep up with modern times, and the consideration of a new ordinance is being proposed. This ordinance takes into consideration taxi cab businesses as well as some of the newer businesses under newer names such as Uber, and they're all defined under the vehicle for hire. The ordinance provides definitions to many of the names and titles used throughout the vehicle for hire industry. It places requirements on both the owner of the company as well as requirements for the drivers of said vehicles. There's an insurance requirement to protect the owners, drivers, as well as the general public. The ordinance requires a background check be done on all drivers to ensure the safety of the public at large. It requires the business license to, it requires a business license to operate within the city of Coos Bay, and it regulates the number of vehicles that can be stored in a residential neighborhood. I'll get into that a little bit later. And if the ordinance is agreed upon by the city Coos Bay Council, the ordinance would replace the Coos Bay's existing taxi regulation code section 5.30 and would go into effect 30 days from the days it is enacted. A couple things that I highlighted at the work session that I thought I would go over again with you guys tonight. The new proposed ordinance, it kind of spells out a few things in a section of the definitions. It includes the vehicle for hire portion that I was just speaking about. It kind of defines what that is to include some of the newer businesses like the Uber. It also, in section 4, requires a business license for all of those types of businesses to include the newer Ubers and companies such, which keeps them in line with the current taxi cab ordinance. It has a driver's requirements section in there. I think everybody could agree this portion is pretty important. It requires that person to have a valid driver's license, to have a proof of registration, proof of insurance, all the stuff that would be required by any other business or company. It permits the city, and this is important, it permits the city to conduct a criminal background investigation on the drivers. That keeps the public safe. And the criminal background check should include searches no less than 7 years. So it's a pretty in-depth background search. It has in section 6, it has an insurance requirement, and that was actually vetted through our insurance agent. And so they would be required to meet those insurance requirements. It has section 7 operational requirements. It basically, it spells out for taxi cab companies that shall have their company name, logo, phone number, and vehicle identification number in plain sight. That's also going to be required for the other vehicles, vehicle hire. I know I've seen oftentimes they have like a little blue light, or they have their own way of identifying that they are a vehicle for hire. That's a requirement. It also has a use of a direct route requirement, which obviously protects the public, the person that they are relying to get them from point A to point B, and they can take the longest route and obviously charge them in addition to what they need to be charged. There is an audit section in here that allows the city to audit the operators up to 2 times per calendar year. And there obviously a denial, suspension, revocation process if someone is outside of compliance of the ordinance. There's a storage for vehicles section, section 11, and I know there was a comment from a counselor on this, and the vehicle, we kind of amended that section, and basically what it says is no more than 1 vehicle, taxi cab, vehicle for hire, etc., will be parked or stored in a residential area or at the owner or driver's residence. It is the intention of this section that 1 permitted vehicle to be the vehicle used on a daily basis for the transportation of people under the definition above, and that's the vehicle for hire. And we added only 1 business license per residence will be issued without additional approval by the city manager or his or her designee. That's to protect the residential neighborhoods where they don't become a storage yard for multiple vehicles for hire. Section 12, it would have the violation section. If somebody was outside of compliance, there's a process, and then there's also a process that they could appeal. And so really that kind of, I didn't get too deep into it, but that basically spells it out. And so what staff is recommending is if it pleases council to open a public hearing, accept the public comments, and then follow by enacting the ordinance to amend the city Coos Bay Municipal Code related to vehicle for hire businesses. Thank you.
Before we open the public hearing on this, do you have any questions for the chief? So, Chief, the things that have been taken out of our ordinance is, number one, didn't we have in there that the vehicles would have to be inspected? And we're not doing that because we just don't have the capacity, am I correct?
Yeah, so you are correct in saying the previous or the current taxi ordinance that we have does have a section in there that states that they are to have their vehicle inspected, and then they provide the city with that inspection. To my knowledge, and I looked into this, to my knowledge that has not been occurring just due to the resources that the city has in terms of staffing. We have not been following that. So we removed that section, not saying that that's not important, but I think that part is kind of somewhat covered in the insurance requirements, and that's what's going to protect the public at large is if they were involved in an accident or injured due to the vehicle not being properly inspected or the brakes not being properly maintained, that owner would be responsible, and that's where that insurance piece would take effect.
And what else has been taken out of the ordinance that's?
The other portion that I know was brought up, and I looked into that as well, was the alcohol and drug testing requirements. And I looked into the existing ordinance, and it does have a section in there under section 8, drug testing. It says each taxi company shall maintain and provide proof to the city of ongoing random drug testing program. And then it later states that they will follow the program under Department of Transportation. Again, to my knowledge, that has not been occurring. I do not know if any of the taxi companies is actually reporting those random drug testing to the city, and if they are, I don't know who they would be reporting those to. Obviously, that's important, but I think that again is covered in the background check that the city is allowed to do, and then obviously just through standard police enforcement out there for DUI and impaired drivers.
And so on this drug testing in the existing ordinance, how often, even though it's not being done, how often do they need to do the testing and report to the city? Annually?
Under the new proposed?
No, the one that we have, the existing one.
The existing one, it says that they would provide it, let's see if it says, I'm not sure if it really spells it out how often. It just says maintain and provide proof to the city of ongoing random drug testing program. And they also may enter into and create a pool of random testing and all submit them together. It doesn't, unless I'm missing it, maybe you'll hear in public comment, but it doesn't really indicate how often they have to provide said testing to the city.
So it would be if somebody asked for that or had a complaint
Correct.
to the city?
Yes, correct.
So Chief, also, when this ordinance, the new ordinance was drafted, you, I understand, reached out to Roseburg and Bend, Oregon, both, and this is similar to what they have?
Yeah, so we did. We reached out to Bend and Roseburg. We actually took both of their ordinances, and I think ours is a little closer to Roseburg than it is Bend's, but we combined both those ordinances and kind of tailored it to our needs. In addition, I should mention that we worked very closely with North Bend, the city of North Bend, and we actually developed this ordinance together to try to keep the cities on the same page. We know that the businesses are probably going to operate from one city to the next. I believe North Bend is really close to bringing theirs to their council as well for adoption.
Okay, any other questions?
I do have a couple questions. Just piggybacking on that comment that, you know, somebody may be operating their business from, let's say it's a, you know, like an Uber or a Lyft from North Bend, and they're doing business in Coos Bay. So I guess it's more of a procedure. We have a moving target. We've had some experiences with, you know, people renting out short-term rentals from their home, turning those in, and it took staff time trying to figure those out. So how do we ensure, do the violations and the penalty section of that cover if somebody is operating in North Bend, has a business license in North Bend, but they're operating as well in Coos Bay? How do we make sure that they're also licensed in our city?
If any business that operates inside the city limits is required to have a business license. So even if they had their business home was in North Bend, such as Yellow Cab used to be, and I don't know where your home base is now, but they used to be out by the airport, but they still had a city business license.
I do. My business has licenses in both.
Right.
So in the instance where somebody maybe from college wants to do that for a portion of their time to create income, and like I said, it's kind of a moving target, whereas like an Airbnb is stationary, that's a little easier to find. How do you determine how do we make sure that people are licensing in our city to operate?
Well, I'm assuming we'll be calling both Uber and Lyft to get who their drivers are, because the company's going to want to be licensed, and then their drivers will have to be licensed as well. In addition, I don't believe they're going to be able to get onto their apps to get drivers. Currently, the taxi cab companies also provide us a list of, I believe, their drivers, and their drivers have to come in and do their background checks.
Okay, and then when somebody comes to the city to get a license to operate a vehicle for hire, whether it's a cab company or Lyft or Uber, do they provide the registration, current registration, insurance, all that stuff? We don't just issue a license and then have to, or a business license and go back and have to check.
I'm going to
if there's
refer that
a-
one to the chief, because I've been out of the police department for more than a decade.
So that's a good question. So when they come in to fill out a business license application, that before that license issued to that said company. There is, it's sent over to the police department, and on that form, they'll generally list their drivers, and we'll run those checks on the drivers and on their vehicles that are indicated on that form. And so with this new revised ordinance, if it is adopted, we may have to look at that process in a little more detail and make sure that all of our bases are covered. But that's how that process should take place. And then once we give, the police department gives a clearance on that, then they can issue out their business license.
Okay, I just want to, the reason that I ask those questions is I just want to make sure that we're being fair between the cab companies that are operating and somebody that's maybe doing this as a part-time, app program, that they're being treated the same that we are, because, for example, Yellow Cab or the other ones that are operating are very visible, and it may not be as clear if we see those operating. I just want to make sure that we're being equitable.
And I agree, and I think that is kind of the whole effort of this revised ordinance, because currently there isn't any regulations on Lyft or Uber, and so that's the intent of the ordinance, is to be able to help regulate evenly and equally.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, no other at this time from the council. We'll open the public hearing. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing to consider the enactment of proposed ordinance amending Coos Bay Municipal Code related to vehicle for hire businesses. So the two on my list first are Dick and Jeremy. You can go first if you'd like. And we also do have the letter, Jeremy, from you that's in the packet. So whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first, Mayor.
Okay.
Dick Leslie, I live at 93581 Bay Park Lane in Coos Bay. And good evening to the mayor and the city manager and all you councilors. You're doing a great job. I'm really proud of this city. It's really picked up in the last 5 years. Maybe that's because I retired and got out of it. I'm not sure. First, I'd like to speak to these proposed changes, and I'd like to commend the folks that did the work. I was part of the original group that spent 18 months writing the original taxi ordinance, and I know the amount of work, the word parsing that goes into this type of document. I'd like to comment that I was a little bit surprised that the members of the local vehicle for hire industry were not tapped for their input into this proposed ordinance. Between myself and Jeremy, current owner of Yellow Cab, we have 50 years of local hands-on experience in the industry. We were recognized by an International Vehicle for Hire Association as the best small taxi cab fleet in the United States and Canada in 2010. And Jeremy was chosen as the taxi cab driver of the year in 2013. We do know this industry. We know how it works, and we know some of the pitfalls that are involved in operations. And as you're aware, ORS 221.485 and 495 are the statutes that authorize your current locality to regulate our industry. When I reviewed these statutes, I was struck by the focus on public safety. The chief mentioned it a couple of times on insurance to promote public safety and do these other things. And if I may quote from the ORS 221-485, the safety and reliability of such vehicles and the economic well-being of their owners and operators are matters of public concern. And to continue quoting, Section 3, the purpose of this ordinance is to promote the safety and welfare of the general public. And when we did review the proposed replacement of our current ordinance, we were concerned by the lack of regulation in two areas. The chief mentioned both of them. One is the drug screening and alcohol and drug policy. Two is the vehicle inspections. And he is absolutely correct that he couldn't find any activity from our industry into the city because it was our understanding, it was the city to ask for this information. And if I may say so, more than 20 years ago, we found out that if you operated a cab company, you didn't have to report a positive drug screen. You didn't have to get rid of the person. You didn't have to do anything if you had a positive drug screen. It was not required. And that was part of our effort over 2 decades to get this tightened up. In other words, if we just simply change the current ordinance on these two sections of it, drug screening and vehicle inspections, because I understood that we drug screen every 30 days. Every once a month, we have a drug screen, automatic, boom, 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 and we act on that drug screen. All we have to do is to add to those two sections is that the owner will be required to send to the city, at no cost to the city, no time to the city, the results of your annual your monthly drug screen and your annual vehicle inspections. And the vehicle inspections are not done by the city. They're done by a third party that is approved by the city. So it could be Bayshore Auto, it could be Tom's Automotive, it could be whoever might want to do that, but they would be approved by the city. So I really would like to slow this down a little bit. March 22nd, 2 weeks ago, here's a change of something that's been in effect for 20 years. We've known there's been issues with this for 20 years. It's time to fix and replace. We welcome the TNCs. We welcome that platform, because that is good. It's good for the community. And so we don't have a problem with that. Competition is good. Like I said, when the current ordinance was passed, we thought we had protected the public safety. But we learned that a rogue operator could run drug addicts on the street all day long and never have to report it, ever. So, and here's another point. We were a zero-tolerance company in the mid-'90s. From 1986, when I bought the company, until the mid-'90s, we were zero tolerance. You drank, you couldn't drive. If you were drunk, you couldn't drive. You couldn't get in the car. If you had used drugs, we didn't want you in our organization. But in the mid-'90s, we began drug screening. And within 30 days, we lost 35% of our current drivers. It was very difficult when you just wipe out a third of your drivers. But we were a better company, and we offered a better and safer product to the community. And I would like to just say, hey, let's back off this for a month. Let's make these changes that would be compatible with public safety. And because we don't have to want to wait another 20 years if we don't get this right to make some changes. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Jeremy?
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Oliver. I'm the owner of Yellow Cab Taxi. And I'd like to thank everyone involved in preparation of the proposed Vehicle for Hire City Ordinance. With all the changes we've had over the past 20 years, I do believe that changes to the city ordinance have been long overdue. In addition to the letter I submitted last week with my concerns to public safety, I do have a couple questions regarding the new proposed city ordinance. And I just want to make sure that what's in the ordinance is clear and not misunderstood. The first thing that stuck out was the definition of a limousine. The way I read it is that only vehicles that have been stretched are classified as limos. Is that correct? Section 4, paragraph D. The license issued under this chapter is valid for 1 year. Is this issue date to 1 year out, or is it on a calendar year? Like if I get my license July 15th, 2022, is it good until July 15th, 2023? Section 7, paragraph A, records management. Are only TNCs required to store records on all trips provided? That's the way I read it. The only reason why I ask is if you go to Section 8 under audit, what records will be required for other for-hire transportation companies? Section 7 F1, it shall be unlawful for any person to smoke in a vehicle for hire if oxygen tanks or other devices containing inflammable materials are present in the vehicle. In this new ordinance, is smoking in the for-hire transportation vehicle now allowed if the vehicle is not transporting oxygen or flammable materials? One other thing I couldn't find in the new ordinance is who on the city staff will be tasked with enforcement of the proposed ordinance. In Section 9, it says that the city recorder may suspend, revoke, or refuse to issue a license if an operator has violated or not met any of the provisions of this code section. Then it goes further down in Section 12, paragraph B, subparagraph 2I says the chief of police shall provide notice and order of revocation or suspension. And then 2 paragraphs later, it does say a hearing shall be held before the city manager as soon as practical. I just don't know who is to be contacted if anyone has questions or complaints in regarding to compliance with the ordinance. In closing, I would like to point out that the current city ordinance in place has kept our community safer regarding for-hire transportation since it was adopted over 20 years ago. The for-hire transportation industry has been evolving for a while now, and I believe that we as a community can embrace change without compromising what is most important to all of us, and that is safety. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, are there anyone else, is there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment on this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. So, Chief, can you address some of those comments that Jeremy had brought up for clarification?
Yeah, I was trying to write them down as you were speaking. The first was the limousine definition. You know, I don't necessarily have a perfect response to you on that. That would obviously be the most general, you know, thought when you see a limousine or a vehicle that's stretched. That's a limousine. I think if it doesn't fall under that category, there's another definition that vehicle would fall under. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that the limousine means a stretched vehicle. And that's how that's kind of intended. If you don't mind repeating some of you had 4 points.
The license issued under the chapter is valid. This is section 4, paragraph D.
Chief, I can probably answer that. The license is valid for the calendar year.
Correct. I mean, that's the current.
Yes.
But it's not stated in the new.
Yeah, I think that's still the intent.
And also, if I had re-licensed a driver in October, the city would prorate the license fee for those 2 months, and then at the end of the year, all of the drivers in that particular organization would be licensed for the year. And as it came on, that's the way it would be done. But it's spelled out in the old one. So I think there's clarification and number for that.
Yeah, okay. So it's intended to coincide with your business license, which is a calendar year. So, yes.
The other one was section 7, paragraph 8, for records management. Listed in here,
Yeah, you had indicated it, does it just refer to the TNC? No, all the companies are required to keep records, and those records could fall under audit, and that audit section allows the city to audit them up to 2 times per calendar year. So it's not just intended for the TNCs.
yeah, just the way it's spelled out there.
So does that need to be added like it is in the other sections, TNC or taxi company?
Can I make a comment? I think to Dick's point, perhaps the better thing to do this evening is maybe to allow the chief to meet with Yellow Cab Taxi and go over these details. It sounds like we have to make a few changes, unless I misunderstood, and then perhaps this can be brought back to council.
It really is up to the council. The last ordinance was updated in 2001. There's nothing, as you know, we've been working on the marijuana ordinances, and we adopted some, and then we've gone back and we've updated them as we see, as the council and staff believe that they need to be updated. You could do the same with this. If you wanted to adopt this so that you could get the wholesale changes in, you could always come back. If there's certain sections that you believe are important and that you want to have changed, we could update those. Or we could halt the process and bring back another version for your consideration. It's really up to the council.
Thank you, Raja.
Council? You know, I'm in favor of moving forward on this, and I think there's a few points that were brought up by Jeremy and Dick that probably need to be addressed and changed according to listening to the chief. Do you agree, Chief, that there needs to be a little corrections on those?
Yeah, I would certainly.
But as far as the ordinance and overall, I mean, I believe this is the way that we should go. I mean, for us to try to maintain records of these things being turned in the drug testing. It's random, it's not everyone. I don't think you do every employee all the time. You do random, right, random employees, because I've done the same thing at the restaurant, and I understand it's an issue that is out there. And I commend you for doing it, because it makes you a better business, and that's what makes you as good as you are. But anyway, there are a few details I think that they brought up that we do need to address, and maybe make the change and come back at our, do you think the next council meeting or the 2 council meetings?
I think we could bring it back to the next council meeting.
Next council meeting. Everyone comfortable with that?
I'll suggest 2 council meetings, because remember, if we bring you another ordinance to amend the current
Oh,
ordinance,
right.
we'll need to have 10 days before,
So
or a
it'll
week
be,
before.
it'll be 2 council meetings, which will be the month. And then, Chief, you'll reach out to these
Yes, I
2
will.
and get those specific comments that they made
Yes, I will.
and address their concerns. So we've been operating, I just want to make sure the public understands, we've been operating without these checks and balances that have been brought up and that were adopted in 2001, because we just don't have the bandwidth to do this. We're limited what we can and can't do. And in my mind, if we did do this, we would have to charge an exorbitant amount of fee to make sure that we're able to do it, because we would probably have to hire somebody to oversee this kind of process. So if we decide to do that, I think that we need to make sure that we put a fee in place, that we have someone that we're going to make sure to be able to do this, just like we did with the FOG program. We wanted to make sure it was a program that could come in that was not going to impact the staff. Otherwise, I think there needs to be a fee. But anyway, those are my comments. I'll bring those up at another time. Probably shouldn't even bring them up tonight. But anyway, any comments from the council before we move forward? Or something that you might want to have the
I'm
staff
trying to
address?
weigh what's better, to implement now, which is what I heard, and then come back again to clean up something.
Well, I mean, you could go either way. I think personally.
Or would it be better, would it be cleaner to give it the 2 meetings and do it all at once?
Well,
I mean,
and hopefully we would be able to do, the necessary changes that, we won't have to address it again. But I think that these are all living documents, and I think that we need to keep that in mind. I believe that we should probably give the time for the chief to meet with these individuals and get those corrections that we know that need to be made, and then address it in 2 weeks. But that's just me. The rest of you?
No, I agree. I don't feel comfortable voting on a document until it's been fully vetted myself.
that was my point. I think it's cleaner to take the time, get it right as we can.
Sarah? And okay. Cindy?
Do I need to make a motion?
No, I don't think we have to take any action on it, do we?
No.
Yeah.
And I would suggest, if that's the direction you would go, we would actually involve North Bend as well
Yeah,
in the
you might-
timing of this, since we want to have, it's been the intent all along to have an ordinance that are similar in both cities.
Right. So before they act on it, yes, you should, they'll be contacted and notified probably. Right.
Do we know when they're bringing their ordinance before?
We don't know that, but understand that both the chiefs are on a first-name basis and contact each other quite frequently, so I think that they could probably work out a potential meeting together with the representatives. And I would suggest then we also open this up to any other company that wants to be involved in that meeting.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Oh, yes, you're right. And yeah, you might want to reach out to the others and see if there's any indication of anything they want, even though they might not be represented here this evening.
I will.
Okay. All right, that being said,
I think a hand
so we
went up
won't
in the
take any action.
audience.
We won't, pardon? We
I
won't
said,
take any
I think a
action on
hand went
this.
up in the audience.
We're here. I was just saying bye.
Oh, okay. So if you have some issues or that you think that might need to be addressed, please contact the chief, and or maybe he'll reach out to you, and you can put your comments in. All right?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming, everyone, Jeremy and the others. And so hopefully we'll see you in 2 more meetings. And so thank you. All right. So we won't take any action on this, and we'll move forward on the next item. Pardon?
Do we have to close the public hearing, or do we?
I already closed it.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, if I didn't close the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing, then we have council comments and we won't take any action, just in case. Thank you, Lucinda. I thought I did, but I don't know. Tonight has a few bumps in the road. Okay, number 9, consider award of contract for design and construction services for the Summer Street projects. Jim, I presume you're handling this?
I'll take this. Yeah, at the November 23rd, 2021 work session, staff discussed the 2022 street repair projects with the council. Funding for the projects will come from the transportation utility fee and the 2% Pacific Corp franchise fee, as well as urban renewal funds. Staff has requested that the Dyer Partnership provide an estimate for design, bidding, and construction management for 4 of the projects under their existing miscellaneous engineering services contract. 2 of the projects are proposed to be paid for using the TUF and 2% revenue, and the other 2 using the Empire Urban Renewal funds. Staff is requesting council award the contract to the Dyer Partnership and authorize the expenditure of up to $106,183 in transportation utility fee and 2% franchise fee funds for the costs associated with these services. By a separate action later tonight, staff will request that the Urban Renewal Agency consider authorizing funding for engineering services for the other 2 projects. The 2 projects that I'm requesting your consideration for right now are the project on North 14th Street between Myrtle Avenue and Nutwood Avenue, and LeClaire Street between Ocean Boulevard and Milligan. And the maps are attached to your staff report. That concludes my report.
Council, questions for Jim?
Are these the only summer projects, or do we still have pothole
There's
projects?
others. We have 2 others under design by another engineering firm that the cost was low enough that staff could approve the contract. And then we have some others in the downtown area that are partially designed, and we're just waiting for making sure that we don't have any conflicts with our blueprint projects and the parking lot project that are going on near Alder, Date streets in front.
Anyone else, questions or comments for Jim on these? Okay, hearing none, would you like to proceed?
I'll move to award a contract for design, bidding, and construction management of the 2022 street projects to the Dyer Partnership and authorize the expenditure of up to $106,183 for the contract services.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the contract to Dyer Partnership for the streets that have been talked about at 106, 183. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Okay, consideration to award contract for Front Street Green Parking Lot Environmental Remediation, Design and Construction Observation Contract. Now, this keeps on going, Jim.
It just keeps going, but Stefan really wants to give this presentation, so he's here tonight to do that.
Well, we have someone new talking about this. Great. I'm sorry. It's just frustrating sometimes. This has been going on for 5 years. Am I correct? Yeah. And a lot of regulations, not on city regulations, but federal and state that we keep running into. So.
But you bring good news, so that's exciting.
I'm sorry. If we're getting closer, so close.
I'm Stefan Stice, the water quality engineer for the city of Coos Bay. The following is in pursuit of completing a portion of Goal 3 of the 2021 to 2023 council goals. More specifically, this is to develop a parking lot on the property formerly used as a scrapyard located on Front Street between Cedar and Date Avenue. The subject site was originally identified as having contaminated soils during the 2001 Brownfield Development Pilot Project for the Front Street Renewal and Redevelopment Project. Since that report, there have been a variety of other reports about how to remediate the contaminated soils, and in 2020, a consent judgment was issued to the city of Coos Bay by the Coos County Circuit Court. The consent judgment is intended to protect the city from potential liability for pre-acquisition release of hazardous substances at or from the property in return for the city undertaking remediation obligations. Said remedial obligations are outlined in a scope of work which was provided by Stantec and included in the consent judgment. The scope of work includes performing a bench scale treatability testing program, treatment of highly contaminated soils, implement engineering controls to prevent exposure to post-treatment contaminated soils, draft an easement of equitable servitude, perform post-treatment performance monitoring, coordinate progress communication with DEQ, and a draft final closure report to be submitted to DEQ. The consent judgment also states that the above referenced scope of work is to be performed under the direction and supervision of a qualified employee or contractor, and that Stantec is the approved contractor to oversee the remediation process. City staff has recently completed a 30% design of the parking lot and now requires assistance from Stantec to finish the environmental remediation portion of the design. For this purpose, city staff is seeking approval to award the contract for environmental remediation design and construction observation services to Stantec.
Any questions? So we don't know when this is going to start though, right?
Well, the report will be done, I believe, this summer, but we probably won't start the remediation till next summer.
Yeah, so we'll be working with them on design more or less immediately. And then next summer, we hope to have 100% design ready to go out to bid and construction next summer.
Okay. Questions, anyone?
Can we, if we start next summer, can we get it done by fall? I'm going to hold you to that. I'm holding
He
you
said
to that.
yes.
Yeah.
I saw it.
I'd be careful.
Or there was no.
I mean, after, Nate, did you look at this consent judgment? That was like, wow.
We've had that for a while. That was the first key getting from DEQ so that we can move ahead with this.
Yeah, that was a product of the prospective purchaser agreement that we had to go through with the former owner. That was a requirement to get that.
That's the end product
Okay.
of that process.
All right.
Roger,
Anyone?
I don't know if this is the right time. We just had a Front Street meeting recently, and there was conversation about the windmill that the city owns, and what a wonderful opportunity it would be to put that in the parking lot downtown. We could save a considerable amount of money and not purchase a clock. And the windmill, I think, would be more fitting in the downtown area instead of the heritage area. So I would like to put that on record. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I think it would be a great opportunity to still showcase the windmill, but take it away from our heritage location and find a more suitable piece for that area.
I do believe that's also coming as a recommendation from the Front Street Blueprint Committee, and will come to the council for adoption in the beginning of June, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
But staff is already aware of that and are taking the necessary steps to make that happen.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
All right, council, any other comments, questions? Hearing none, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to award the contract for environmental remediation, design and construction observation services for the construction of the Front Street Green parking lot to Stantec for $152,203, which includes a 15% contingency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the contract for Front Street Green Park Lot to Santec. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, I see a lot of people in the audience. I just want to make sure, is there any public comments that you didn't have a chance to make? Hearing none? Okay, we'll move on. City manager's report.
Yes, the council has an established set of rules that you operate under. Part of that also covers how do things get on the agenda. One of those rules basically states to protect the council from hearing things that are outside of your jurisdiction. A rule that states if there's a matter that's a council member request, or there's a presentation that someone wants to present to the council that does not fall within the jurisdiction of the council, that requires a majority of the council to approve that. Not too long ago, you had a request for a presentation out of Langlois on the Red Rock Fish Reserve. And I just wanted to check one last time. At this point in time, I only have one council member that wants to, or that has expressed that they want to hear that presentation. And unless there is a a majority, then we'll let them know that that's not been approved. Hearing none, I'll move on. Your other matter is it takes any one council member to place a matter that does fall under your jurisdiction. And you had a request from a business owner who wishes to place a business in a zone that's not currently allowed. It was allowed when he was seeking to do that 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and he wanted to come make an appeal. I would share with you, I have not had any council member ask to have that put on the agenda. And my plans, unless I hear differently, was to advise him tomorrow that that's not going on the agenda. So with the business out of the way, I can tell you that we've had a local artist and former city council member who updated the Maritime mural that sits on the Checkerberries, I was going to say Shark Bites building. And the artist actually is in the audience. I saw him a few minutes ago. Mike Vaughn, he actually is the artist that designed that, painted it originally, repainted it about 11 years ago, and then did some touch-up work. So that looks a lot better. It's cleaner. And I also wanted to give you an update that things are moving forward on the Highway 101 mural that's been proposed. Also the same artist. And I think we're getting all the, dotting all the I's and crossing the T's to get the contract going, so that should be starting fairly soon. We are still waiting on the other proposed mural site. Just because of staff time, we haven't put together the RFP yet. But that will be moving forward. And then lastly, I put on all of your seats, there's an informational flyer on a fundraiser for the Pioneer Cemetery. They're hoping to raise funds to undertake a survey so that they can get a condition of what's happening up at the Pioneer Cemetery and then determine what needs to happen in moving forward. So in connection with One Penny recognition, which is April 1st, I don't know if it has anything to do with April Fools, that you can't do anything with a penny anymore, but they propose something different because they believe they can. They are asking for us to collect pennies, and they'll use those pennies to hopefully get enough money to have the survey done. They're proposing actually a contest, and I know the mayor's up for this, between Coos Bay and North Bend, because that Pioneer Cemetery served both communities. Yeah. So they brought us these jugs to fill up. This is actually North Bend's, and you'll notice it's empty. I may have to, this is Coos Bay's, and we've had these for about 6 or 7 hours, and this one is rather full. And I was told that we can get some more. So if you have pennies and you want to donate them, I feel sorry for our friends in North Bend that they're probably going to lose this contest.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure that happens. I do not want to go. I mean, I don't mind visiting them, but I've been there once before, and I had to swallow my pride and give them the award, the trophy. I don't want to do that again.
We had won it for 4 years in a row and didn't ever see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're never going to let you live that down, Stephanie.
Well, and this is a great cause. This is an historic place. It didn't always belong to the city, but it does now. We took it over when the Oddfellows couldn't care for it any longer. So it's a treasure that needs to be maintained, and we're very blessed having some people that have headed that up for a number of years. Cricket Souls, who couldn't be here because she's caring for a family member tonight, but I was assured that she's going to be down here to take these over to North Bend on a show and tell.
Okay. Yeah, and Cricket started this when she was in high school, and so I mean we're really blessed to have someone like her to continue on and have an interest in this community. Even though I think she's back in Kentucky right now.
Yeah, that's actually her daughter.
Oh,
Becky.
okay, all right. So also, I just need to note, there was a joint email going back and forth with Jessica and myself. And so if you read in here, at the suggestion of Dr. E. Mingus, the city of Marshfield is planning to impose a tax on the corpses of non-residents buried in Marshfield Cemetery. The amount has not been fixed yet, but it has been suggested that a $2 be charged for every burial permit for corpses of all non-residents of Marshfield except the indigent poor of the county. The Marshfield City Council has instructed City Attorney Farren to draft an ordinance providing for this, and it will probably be adopted at the next session. So,
What is that at today's dollars?
yeah,
Yeah.
Jessica, yeah, I don't know what
I
it'd be.
know.
Jessica said in her email that she felt the mayor of Coos Bay and the mayor of North Bend, were on better terms, and that probably would not happen. And I assured her that we would not enact something like that for this other citizens. So anyway, a little tongue-in-cheek stuff, and it's kind of fun. So anyway, we'll continue on with it.
That concludes
But I
my
do not
report.
want to go back to North Bend. I'd much rather see Jessica standing here in front of us, so.
Sounds good. That
Anything
concludes
else?
my report.
All right, thank you, Roger. Council comments, Carmen.
Well, I don't have a ton for the day. I'm just really hoping that people get out and vote in support of the library bond measure. I would really like to find any way that I can support the library